I'm gonna do a little tour of the one of the larger nursery plantings that I have. On this east side, I've got a bunch of herbaceous perennials. So we've got Sochan reaching its full summer size, topping out at like 8 feet. Pretty intense. Although this patch has been here grown solid for 3 years now, and it doesn't expand that much. It sends out a little bit of a runner here and there, but it's not that hard to keep in sort of one area, but it definitely owns that area in a pretty serious way. This is a plant called wild quinine. Got a lot of medicinal uses, as you may imagine. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I grew the plant from seed and it is phenomenal. And the one cool thing about it that I've noticed is that the flowers stay like this for like months. It's kind of crazy. Like this cluster here is probably 2 months old, almost. Often has lots of pollinators on it. Not a whole lot right now, but there's not a lot out at this moment. I'm not sure why. This patch isn't doing too great here, but this is called compass plant. Pretty cool sunflower family. This one's meadow sweet. I really love this plant. Takes me back to different times and places because it's from Europe. One of my family is from Norway, so we would go used to visit when I was little, and the scent of these really takes me back there. But was the original source of aspirin actually before a lot of the willows for, well, not the original, there is no original, maybe anything, but more potent than willows as far as a natural source of aspirin. And then we've got Siberian sea over here on the side, absolutely loaded. And I've extolled on the benefits of Siberian sea before, but here's a good case in point. Most fruit this year has just been absolutely destroyed by one pest or another disease or bad weather or whatever, or blossoms being destroyed in the frost. It's just been a pretty awful growing season in many respects. But Siberian seas are full of peaches. They're still rock hard and green, so all the other stone fruits succumbed to plum curculio, 20 oppositions in each fruit, and here this whole tree is full of fruit that is like unblemished. Not even gonna get brown rot, astonishingly. Then we've got wild licorice, another cool herbaceous perennial. Little bed of Cornus officinale, which is sort of like Cornus moss, but somewhat different. These are like, I don't know, 18 years old. I'm just kidding. But the seeds take 2 years to germinate, and then they don't move much for like 2 years. So these must be at least 3 years old. These are some actual western red cedar. I've been trying to multiply. Eastern red cedar, which has nothing to do with, they're botanically super far distant. These are western red cedar cuttings that took pretty well last year and growing on. That's American arbor vitae, Thuja occidentalis. Eastern white cedar, unrelated to eastern red cedar. This is kind of cool. This is like a pawpaw that got sort of overtaken by Queen Anne's lace, but we've been selling some cut flowers at the farmer's market, and they're a nice filler for that. So I let them go to seed, and I don't know how much it's impinging upon the growth of the pawpaws. It seems like maybe it would have something to do with it, because over here there's not that many Queen Anne's lace and the pawpaws are bigger, but I think it's, knowing the history of this bed, I think it's not quite that simple. And here, the Queen Anne's lace is really big and the pawpaws are really nice. But before we harvest the rootstock, I'll come through and take these out. It looks kind of crazy now, but it's actually just sort of a polyculture of just, self-sown weed and pawpaws. So that's going pretty well. Bed of Carpathian walnuts, just first year from seed. Peaches, first year from seed, coming on really well. These are Aronia that I'm stool layering. Saskatoons, third year, smoky, had a really nice crop of fruit that we ate on here for 3 weeks or so, and then let them to grow. And these really have to move on pretty soon. Here is another direct sown Carpathian walnut bed. Gave them a little bit more space to try to get nice big stems, and looks like that will be happening. This bed here is empty, is about to receive cuttings from the misting chamber, so we're going to fill those out and they'll grow the rest of the season up here. Actually, cool little bit here. These are cuttings from last year that I rooted in the misting chamber, and includes a bunch of stuff. We've got apricots from cutting, peach, quince, a bunch of quince, cherry plum, thornless blackberry, goomy. So that was just to kind of prove to myself you can take the cuttings out in the spring after they rooted the previous season and plant them out in garden beds, and boom, nice size trees, actual trees from cutting. So you could do that with varietals. Seedling apple that came out of the compost. These are pretty cool. This is actually seedlings that I grew from my Prunus tenella, which is dwarf Siberian almond. They do actually make little almonds that are edible. They kind of like the size of a pea, but they're an almond and they taste good. And they have beautiful blooms in the early spring. These are sea berries from last year's cuttings of Russian orange. This we just planted in some lettuce because this bed here is going to get more cuttings as well. Here we've just got, still beginning emergence on pawpaws. So usually I let the pawpaws grow for 2 years, like over there. That's what will be our nursery stock this year. And then this planting here will spend this whole year and the whole next year in the bed with some other stragglers in here of various species that I've got to get out of there. Here we've got Nanking cherry seed. After the Nankings, got more Aronia that are getting a little bit larger that are going to try to stool layer. Some pretty wild, large asparagus. That's a volunteer, actually. I don't know where it came from. Seedling apricots. Unfortunately, I had this load of mulch wood chips this year, and I used them extensively, and I thought that was going to do the same thing that it always does, but instead of mulching weeds out, it actually brought a ton of excuse my accidental curse. It brought a ton of weed seed in. So we actually had to remulch many beds, and even after that, still weed. So kind of shot myself in the foot pretty badly. I mentioned that because this bed of seedling apricots, I was expecting to be super nice. And instead, the weeds were so bad in here that when I finally got into weed, which is a little late, admittedly, I did a lot of damage to the apricots. So I'll be lucky if they get any reasonable size on them this year, and I need to remulch for the 3rd time. So be careful about your wood chip management. Don't let weeds be producing seeds near them. So this is a kind of a cool vantage point because we've got first year chestnuts. These were absolutely destroyed by a frost on May 18th. They were already in the ground growing really well. And I actually did a video on that. They got totally hit to the ground and had to regrow. So they did come back really nicely, but you know, they could be 1.5 to 2 times as big as they are now had that not happened, but that's what happened. So we've got our 1-year chestnuts, our 2-year chestnuts, which is a nice little section of a bed that I left from last year, and then our 3-year chestnuts back here, which I've got a couple folks that want some really large trees at the end of the season, and we'll actually be able to do that. I will have extras of those if anybody's interested. And I've got some pretty large peaches here. These are some more cuttings from last year. A bunch of variety sea berries, the trifolate orange, bunch of quince. They really did well. And then this is a cardoon. I really just love the flowers on these things. So big, and they're always got pollinators on them, just covered in pollen. Phenomenal smell. There's 3 of them in there. This is the going to seed year for this thing. The first year usually they make, you know, like a lot of vegetative shoots, and then seems like they're biennial. I know that some places they're perennial, but I think they're mostly a biennial life cycle. Very spiky to walk by. More cuttings, figs. Totally forgot that I put those in there. These are some western sand cherries. Pretty excited about those. They're really nice. The only problem I've had is that they grow so low to the ground that they can't really be planted or shouldn't be planted in an area where there's going to be serious weed competition, because they'll get overtaken by height. And wall of hazelnuts. This is the last year they're staying here for sure. So that's an overview of this space. The rest of the season I'm going to be taking cuttings out of the misting chamber that are on the earlier side, and certain things like elderberry and blackcurrant, I'll be able to plant them in here and then actually harvest them in the fall, and then other ones will spend an entire next season in here and then move on. But yeah. Moved these rhubarb from a place where they were not thriving last year. They had grown maybe a quarter this much in 2 years, and then this year I put them in here, and the power of these nursery beds is hard to overestimate. Yeah. That's a pretty large Carpathian walnut. These ones were, they didn't size up last year, and so I left them in the ground, and then they kind of died back to the ground for a variety of reasons, partly that frost. And so these are mostly all shoots from just from right at the ground level. I think you can see right there, coming all the way up. So, nice size. And intermixed with yellowhorn. The yellowhorn seems to need some kind of nurse plant around them. Seems to help out a little bit. Anyway, that's what's going on up in this main garden.